when I was a child and we used to go on a long car journey, I remember asking the famous question that all children seem to ask on long car journeys: are we nearly there yet? And of course, most people would make regular stops when they go on a long car journey to maybe to break up the journey or to refuel or to have a leg stretch. Well, in this particular regard, my dad is not like most people, as he's the kind of person who just wants to get there, even if it's a very long car journey. So he would ideally just keep driving and driving and driving. Of course, we did have to stop occasionally, but he would just want to keep driving as much as possible. And for us as a family, because we had lots of family who lived down south, we would do a kind of annual pilgrimage to go and see the various members of the family. And so this experience of a long car journey and asking this question of, are we nearly there yet, was a fairly common experience for me as a child. Well, this last year, I think, has felt like a long car journey that never seems to be coming to an end, where we haven't been able to stop. For Christians, Lent is this time of the year where we take a deliberate break, we assess our priorities, and perhaps give something up in order to focus on God. Well, again, this kind of feels like deja vu, as we weren't able to celebrate all of Lent or Easter as a church community together last year, and here we are again, and it feels like this long car journey that doesn't ever seem to end. And so in light of that, I wonder what your reaction has been to the idea of Lent this year, if you've maybe stopped and had a think about that, in light of all that we have been through, particularly since last Easter. And so thinking about that question, I have seen two opposite reactions on social media this year. So on the one hand, I've seen this idea that I'm not going to engage with Lent because there's too much going on. And so this is very well summarized by something I read that said, and I quote, "I am abstaining from nothing this Lent. I am taking nothing new on. I am just going to put one foot in front of the other until we are through this thing. All are welcome to join me in this Lenten discipline." So that's on the one hand. And then on the other hand, I've seen reactions from people who, despite all that's going on, despite all that has gone on, they still want to engage in Lent. And so this, again, is summarized by this perspective. And I quote, "I totally get why people don't want to give stuff up this Lent when we have already given up so much. But I've got such a sod-it mentality anyway that I really need the fasting and abstinence of Lent. Otherwise, I'll be feasting and hedonizing the heck out of life permanently." Now, I think these two reactions, I guess at two ends of the scale, are very understandable, whatever your perspective might be. And so I don't think that there is a right or a wrong reaction to Lent this year. But then I saw another reaction on Ash Wednesday, and this time it was from the Archbishop of Canterbury. And he said this: "It feels as if Lent has lasted a year since the last lockdown. We've gone without for so long, the last thing we feel like is abstinence. But Lent isn't about punishing ourselves, it's about drawing closer to Christ and allowing him to share in our struggles." And so I think the Archbishop's response perhaps gives us a little perspective as we think about Lent and why it has been a regular discipline in the church. So in Mark's account of Jesus' 40 days in the wilderness, we are not given very much detail. This time when Jesus is in the wilderness, certainly in Matthew and Luke, you're given a lot more detail. But in Mark, you're given very little detail other than the fact that Jesus went into the wilderness for 40 days. But what we are given is a sense of how it fits within the ministry of Jesus. So following Jesus' baptism, when God says of Jesus, "You are my son, the beloved, with you I am well pleased," after that, Jesus is immediately driven into the wilderness by the Spirit, we are told. And it's only after this time in the wilderness that Jesus' earthly ministry begins by proclaiming the good news of God. That's what Mark tells us. And so for Jesus, the time in the wilderness is therefore a time of preparation for his ministry, and that time is spent alone with God. And so as Jesus draws close to God in the wilderness, we too draw close to God during Lent. That is what Lent is based upon. This is the idea, the foundation of what Lent is all about. And so perhaps during this forced time of going without over the last 12 months or so, maybe you have found yourself drawing closer to God as the number of distractions have significantly been reduced. Or perhaps you have wondered where God has been. In the midst of the struggle and the ever-changing circumstances, maybe you've wondered if God was even with you at all. And so, if you are struggling and have many questions at the moment, which lots of us do, perhaps I would suggest you would find this year's Lent Course helpful. So this is why the particular course for this year has been chosen, because we will be looking through the question of unanswered prayer, which the course is a brand new course that's just come out, and it's a follow-on from a course we did a few years ago called the Prayer Course. If you didn't do that, then it doesn't matter, you can still do this particular course. But so on a Wednesday evening, from this Wednesday, 7:30 p.m, via Zoom, we are going to be exploring this question of unanswered prayer and where we find God in the struggles of life. And so you'll find those details on the weekly email. If you do not receive the weekly email, there is also a link on the Facebook page to our weekly email, so you can see the exact same details on there, and you'll find all the details of how to join in with this year's Lent course. And so this is an opportunity to explore perhaps some of these questions that we have been asking over the last 12 months. And so whatever you need Lent to look like for you, so perhaps it is an encouragement to carry on enjoying your time with God if you have found yourself this year drawing closer to Him as these distractions have been taken away. Or perhaps you need a reminder that God shares in our sufferings as we continue to go through these challenging times. Whatever it is that you need Lent to look like for you, an encouragement or a reminder that God shares in our sufferings, may you find God is with you. And as we travel through Lent, as we journey towards Easter, may we there on Easter Sunday find the ultimate hope and comfort in the risen Christ, and as we continue to journey towards Easter Sunday. Amen.